24 years ago that I started graduate school, and it was then that I found my people, counselors. People who care about our emotions, our relationships, our connections to ourselves and each other and the world around us. It is high honor to do our work and to guide clients through their healing and creating positive change in their lives. It's emotionally, intellectually, and even spiritually rewarding work. In a world where sometimes difficult, scary things happen, mass shootings, school shootings, Fred Rogers had said, look for the helpers in order to keep our faith in humankind. Well, we are the helpers. I'd like each of you to think about your clients and every client that you've worked with over your career, every student that you've taught or supervised, or every person that you've mentored. And I'd like for you to consider how your work with them impacted their lives, their families, their relationships, and their work. And now I'd like you to look around this room and consider how many lives together we have touched. We are a powerful force of goodness in the world, creating an enormous ripple effect of positive change. I'd like you to give yourselves and your colleagues a round of applause. And now as leaders, we can bring our counseling goodness to a whole new level, advocating for our profession and for the clients that we serve and for social justice for all. Thank you for your important work, and thank you for your interest and willingness to serve in leadership in this important profession. And thank you so much for inviting me to share with you today some of my thoughts about how we can apply our counseling skills to leadership. And we can do this in our work, in our families, in our communities, and in this great profession. Self-awareness. Leadership requires some self-awareness. I remember my first ILT 4 years ago. I was in a buffet line and I was talking with a counselor from Arkansas, and I said, gosh, I just love hearing everybody's accents. And the counselor across from me said, well, what about your accent? And I said, my accent? Well, I don't have an accent. And a counselor from Maine, Terry Mitchell, some of you might know him, imitated my Midwestern twang, and he said, Chicago thinks she doesn't have an accent. It's important for us all to have some self-awareness as leaders. We all are works in progress. We all repeat what's familiar. And because we as counselors are our tool, I'm really passionate about us all continuing to do our own personal work, whether it's in our own counseling, consultation, supervision, and continued training like this to work on our own self-awareness. I believe we can only guide our clients as far as we have traveled ourselves in consciousness. It's time for us today to give ourselves permission to let go of any patterns that we are repeating that are no longer serving us. Perhaps it's making ourselves small so that we're not threatening to others. Perhaps it's detrimental caretaking at the expense of our own well-being. I'd like to ask yourself, what is keeping you from being your best self and being the greatest leader that you could be? And get some support and help for moving through that. I love this quote from Lao Tzu. He said, he who knows others is wise, he who knows himself is enlightened. The next emotional tool we're going to talk about is presence. Mary McDonald said, we have to get back to the beauty of just being alive in the present moment. In our work, we see that many people obsess about the past, they second guess things, or they're worrying about the future, when peace can be found in the present moment. And we must remember that as leaders, to be present. We make the best decisions when we're firmly grounded in the present moment, when we're in the here and now, that we're not reactionary, we're in a neutral place. It's much easier. Have any of you seen Will Smith's videos about fault versus responsibility? They're awesome, they're going viral. I encourage you to check it out. He says, you know, it's not your fault if your father was an abusive alcoholic, but it's damn well your responsibility what you're going to do about it. And as leaders, we must take responsibility for ourselves, for our words, for our actions, for our choices, and our commitments. Positivity. Gandhi said, man is what the product of his thoughts, what he thinks he becomes. We know from cognitive behavioral therapy that our thoughts often precede our emotions and our behaviors. We all have an inner critic, that voice in our head that makes us feel small and puts us down and fuels a negative spiral of self-sabotage. And we often speak to ourselves as we would speak to no other. Sometimes we say things to ourselves like, I'm not good enough, I'm not deserving, gosh, I could never do that. It's time for us to change these self-limiting beliefs. I think that we often set our own ceilings. In my work with my clients, sometimes they'll tell me that they're going for a promotion or a new job, and I'll ask them, well, do you think you're going to get it? And if they say, you know what, gosh, there's a lot of competition, you know, maybe not, then I'll say to them, you know what, then you probably won't. And they're often pretty taken aback because normally I'm a warm, fuzzy type of counselor, but I really believe in self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's like sports psychology. You have to envision yourself making the goal in order to know that it's possible. And if you're envisioning negative outcomes, you're going to create that through self-fulfilling prophecy. It's important for us to stop judging ourselves. In my own counseling work, my own counselor said to me, she said, Joyce, you need to stop judging yourself. I noticed that you label your inner experiences as either bad or good. And she said, your feelings are neither bad nor good, nor right nor wrong. They just are. And I said, you're right, my bad. We're all works in progress. We are all perfectly capable of great leadership exactly as we are. Today, if you're dealing with any kind of imposter syndrome, I'd like you to replace that with psychotic optimism. When my inner critic creeps up, I say, bye, Felicia. We need to externalize our critic and let them go and choose the direction of our lives. At a holiday party recently, I saw my friend Randy, and he said, hey Joyce, how's your book coming along? I've been working on a couple books for a few years. And I said, not so good. Yeah, it's not really happening. And he said, oh man, you need to see my monk. And I said, your monk? And he goes, yeah, my Buddhist monk. He would really help you out. And I thought, well gosh, I can use all the help I can get. I'm going to make an appointment and go see this monk. So I did. And he was not the Tibetan-looking monk that I was imagining. He was a nice Jewish man living in an affluent suburb of Chicago, wearing a black t-shirt and jeans. He had just retired from his big job at Accenture to focus on his practice. And within moments of speaking with him, I knew I was talking with one of the most highly intelligent people I'd ever met. He was drawing pictures, diagrams of how science meets spirituality. And we sat down and I started telling him about my book and how I was stuck. And he listened to me for a while, and then he said, I have your answer. And my heart was pounding, and he grabbed a piece of paper, and he wrote something down, and he handed it to me, and I was like, oh my goodness, he's going to give me the answer to everything. And it said, and I said, like, are you being serious? And he said, weaken the fiction. Weaken the fiction of all these stories that you're telling yourself that are keeping you from your greatest self, from your greatest life. Every person in this room is capable of tremendous leadership, and don't let your inner critic tell you otherwise. Self-compassion. Buddha said, you can search the entire universe for somebody who is more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself, and that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Instead of viewing ourselves as from a place of judgment, we need to shift to empathy and develop self-compassion. I believe we can silence that inner critic and instead replace it with a compassionate voice. We can choose to be our best friend. I thought to myself, I'm a good friend. I'm supportive. I give people affirmation. I believe in them. Why can't I do that for myself? It's a choice. We absolutely can do that for ourselves, and we can speak to ourselves with loving kindness. We need to accept ourselves exactly as we are at this point in time and know that we are not expected to be perfect. We can affirm ourselves by honoring our strengths and our uniqueness and our gifts and our beauty and all of our strengths. And we can engage in activities that help us grow, like being at this ILT. That's part of self-care. Good for you for being here. I really like thinking about Gary Chapman's 5 love languages and how to apply those to self-love. Words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service. We can do that for ourselves. If you're interested in that, I wrote an article for the Huffington Post that you can Google to read more about that. Self-compassion also involves self-forgiveness. And leadership, well, sometimes we make some mistakes. Like the time that I emailed the executive committee of the Illinois Counseling Association. And I said, come on guys, let's get our ducks in a row. And the executive director replied, and she said, Joyce, I think you made a typo. I had spelled ducks with an I. Leadership has lots of opportunities for self-compassion and self-forgiveness. Balance. No one on their deathbed ever said, I wish I spent more time at work. We all play multiple roles in our lives. You may have a full-time job, a part-time practice, a board position, not to mention your family, your significant other, and your friends. Work-life balance is really challenging. I do some supervision and consultation at Northwestern, and this year I had about 8 students comment to me how worried and concerned they were about their faculty emailing them at 3:30 in the morning. We need to set better boundaries, time boundaries with our work, or we're going to burn out. And we need to unplug from technology. Turn off your phone when you're eating your meals. Be mindful. Take a break. Turn off your phone before you go to bed. Have some time for yourself. Unplug when you go on vacation. It's super important for our self-care. When I was starting my group practice, Urban Balance, I went and saw a career counselor. And I said to her that I was confused because I knew that being a mom was my greatest honor and my greatest, most important role in life. But I also really love my work and I wanted to start a group practice. And she said, Joyce, you must always plan your career in the context of your life and not the other way around. And so I started Urban Balance with the intention of work-life balance, that I would only work school hours and I would provide referrals and office space and billing services for other counselors who would work evenings and weekends. And it's been the mission of our organization, and we ended up hiring now hundreds of counselors who are looking for flexible part-time work. We must all work and strive for work-life balance. Self-care. Nourishing yourself in a way that helps you blossom in the direction you want to go is attainable, and you are worth the effort. Self-care is not selfish. Self-care is essential. We all think about the oxygen mask analogy when we're on an airplane. You have to take care of yourself first, otherwise you're of no use to anybody else. I sometimes ask myself, would I feed my daughters what I ate yesterday? Maybe not. We must treat ourselves the same way that we would treat somebody who we love very, very much. So making sure we get enough sleep, enough fun, enough good nutrition, leisure, rest, balance, connection with others, exercise, hydration. This is all very important. And it's important for counselors. I'm particularly concerned about how sedentary our profession is. And you know, they say that sitting is the new smoking. And so it's harmful to our health. And so we need to think about how we can remain active. I've started taking all of my conference calls on a walk. And it's helped me get a lot more steps in. I have a colleague who works with resistant adolescents, and she takes them for a walk around the pond, and suddenly they're talking. So think about how you can increase your activity. Think of one thing that you can do for yourself today. I had a client who was really stressed out in her session a couple weeks ago, and I said, hey, before you leave, I want you to tell me 5 things that you're going to do for self-care between now and our next appointment. And she said, okay, this is good. And she got out a piece of paper and she wrote down, number 1, go to bed every night before 1 a.m. And I thought, oh no, it's a little bit of a rocky start. I had another student who seemed so exhausted. I knew she'd been working and going to graduate school and heading up an activity in her community. And I said to her, if you were a cell phone, what would your battery be at right now? And she said, 1%. I want you to check in with yourself in your energy level right now today. If you were a cell phone, what would your battery be at today? And every time you look at your cell phone, notice that. Ask yourself that question. My rule of thumb is if I feel like I'm under 35%, I better do some self-care to refuel. Ask yourself, what can you do for self-care today? And pick one thing that you're going to work on. Feelings are waves of energy which we can choose to serve rather than allowing them to overcome us. This is by Arlene Englander, who's my own counselor. Actually, she's a social worker. Our thoughts, whether positive or negative, trigger feelings, which are waves of energy that we experience in the body. And rather than being caught in them like the undertow, we can teach ourselves how to surf them rather than being absorbed by them. This is detachment. It's a practice of zooming out and looking at our lives from a greater perspective, knowing that what we're experiencing in a moment is a blip in time and that it will pass. And it gives us the ability to be less reactive and to be the bigger person whenever there's interpersonal conflict. This is something that we can practice and develop. It doesn't mean we don't care. In Al-Anon, they say detachment with love. So you can still be lovingly connected, but just not absorb everything that you're observing. So when we're dealing with our clients, we can lovingly be empathically connected to them, but we must learn how to breathe out their stuff so that we're not carrying it. I once was at Target, and the cashier was dealing with a woman in front of me who was extremely rude. This woman was just horrible to the cashier, yelling at him, being very disrespectful. And I watched him, and he was completely calm, and he just kept checking her out. And when it got to be my turn, I said to him, like, wow, that was really impressive. I'm so sorry that that woman treated you that way. And I was really impressed with how you handled that. How did you do that? And he said, I don't let anybody in my head who isn't paying rent. In order to detach, we can detach from the need to be right. We can be the bigger person, let go of trying to be in control of everything. We also need to detach from our fears. I call it fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD. We don't want FUD to control our lives. And part of detachment is detachment from fear. And part of growth and leadership and doing new things is moving through our fears. I think of one of the first times that I did a television segment for ABC. Ironically, it was on stress management, and I was a total stress ball. I did 0 of the things that I was recommending in the segment before the segment. Barely had a wink of sleep the night before. And the producer mic'd me up and said, Joyce, how are you feeling? Are you ready? And I said, I'm great, absolutely. And the sound guy said, yeah, well, actually, I can hear your heart pounding through the microphone, so we're going to have to move it. Sometimes we have to fake it till we make it, until we get comfortable with that new comfort zone. Gratitude. He is a wise man who does not grieve for things he has not, but rejoices for what he has. We must each look at the good parts in our lives to practice gratitude. I remember a president of the Mental Health Counseling Association that started each of her meetings giving thanks to each person sitting at the table and recognizing them for their important contributions. This set the tone positive. Great leaders motivate and inspire others. It's important to keep a gratitude journal and think about all the things that you're grateful about for this work. I'm grateful for this community, our ACA family. I've left you with a lot of quotes today, and I'm going to leave you with my last one, which is my own. And it is, success is to live openly, authentically, and lovingly in alignment with the highest good of self and others, and to the greatest extent possible. This ILT, may our minds be conscious, our hearts open, and our spirit stands with joy. I wish you all great success in your leadership. Thank you.